Next, we have 4.01, the Superintendent's Comments. Ms. Hamburg.
Thank you. Congratulations to Ingrid on her award. Got to see her be surprised with that last week, and that's always fun. I'd like to thank all of our students and staff for a great school year. We are looking forward to next Saturday when we all get to celebrate our 3 senior classes down at the Celeste Center. I did want to advise the public, if you are planning on attending graduation, there is information on our webpage, which can be found on the Teaching and Learning site, including information on construction. So if you're not aware, they're doing some construction down there, which does impact parking. There's a map available, lots of other information. So please plan accordingly, and you might want to leave a little bit earlier than usual just to deal with some of that. But we look forward to recognizing our graduates from Westerville Central first at 10 a.m. this year. And then we have South at 2 and North at 6. Last Friday, I know Ms. Lieben and Mrs. Meyer got to help me recognize our preschool graduates on Friday. So it's pretty cool to get to recognize the preschool graduates, and then a week later, the seniors kind of get to see the full scope of what we do. So congratulations to them. And again, thank you to all the students and staff, and a big congratulations to the families as well. I would like to take a moment to address some concerns and frustrations that we've been hearing from our community about staffing. First, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to reach out and share your thoughts. We've been trying to respond to those as quickly as possible. It's been a little hectic here at the end of the year, and we've been getting a lot of emails, so ask for a little grace and patience as we get to all of those. But it's really important to us that people are paying attention and taking the time to reach out. I've been asked what's different this year compared to other years with moving staff around, and I think there are a few things. Over the last several years, the district's been in a position to be able to add staffing each year for various needs. And so some of that staffing was related to the following. We had a special education audit where we were given information from that audit that indicated we needed to add some staffing. We restored and added electives at the middle school that had been cut during the recession. We expanded our College Credit Plus offerings, giving lots of high school students the opportunity to take those courses on campus. We opened an elementary school and a middle school to eliminate crowding at those levels. So with that, we've had several years in a row where we've been adding staff. And now with some shifts in funding, we're finding ourselves in a different situation. And so I assure you, it wasn't a fun situation to come into as the new superintendent, but that's the reality of where we are right now. And so we're trying to work through looking at shifts in our funding. We're deficit spending. We are looking at less overall revenue and inflationary costs that Nicole's going to talk about during our 5-year forecast. We've worked really hard to get our deficit for next school year from $22 million down to $17 million, but we're still bringing in $17 million less than we'll be spending next year. And so with that, we're looking for opportunities. So we have our regular staffing shifts that we do every year. So when we look at like the elementary level, I know we've talked about this, but just to reiterate, we look every year at where those numbers are across 15 elementaries, and we'll watch those throughout the summer. I will say I would love to see all of our elementary class sizes smaller. We're not in a position to add the amount of staff we would need to get them all down where we would love for them to be. So we're trying to operate within our contract numbers at this point. And we'll watch those very closely with a preference given to the younger grades as we look at the elementary. But on top of that, we're trying to look at where can we reduce and combine, and we've got a slide to talk about what we've done administratively to make some reductions. We've also looked at across our high schools with some retirements. Are there places that we can offer courses less times? That's not ideal for kids because, you know, the more times we can offer a class throughout the day, the more opportunities kids have to get the exact schedule they want. They have to make more choices as we look at not being able to offer things as often. So we are looking across the district, and I know there are a lot of emotions that go into not being able to offer as many things as we were previously. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to build that back up as hopefully something changes with funding over the next few years. But the reality is right now that our legislators are discussing a provision that would have a clawback of our property taxes. We are already deficit spending. If we were to lose additional funding, then we would be looking at other types of shifts. So I know we're working on putting together what does that state minimum look like? What could that potentially look like if we don't have the funding to pay for all the things that we're doing? One thing I would point out, just to continue at our current service levels without additional funding with inflation, that just doesn't work on the math. So that's the hard thing is, we look at what we're offering right now and the things that we've added over the last several years that we believe are good for kids. We still believe they're good for kids, but it's difficult to continue those items without additional funding. So we've been trying to tighten up where we can. In the meantime, we've been very involved with advocating at the State House to try to get the funding that our children deserve, and we would encourage you to continue to help. Many in our community have done a great job of that, and we appreciate that. Nicole is going to be presenting the updated 5-year forecast tonight, and I'll be chiming in some additional on staffing, especially regarding administrative. But at this time, I'd like to invite Scott Reeves, our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and a couple of his team members. We have Gertie Glass, our Executive Director of Specialized Learning Programs, which includes Gifted, and Cheryl Relford, our Executive Director of Elementary Education, to come up and share some information. We've been getting some questions about Gifted, so we just want to give a quick report about where things are with that program and staffing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hamburg, members of the board, good evening. I had the opportunity last week to share some questions that we had with our parent council, specifically around our staffing and our shifts in staffing, but also some of the changes within our gifted staffing as we go into next year. And I want to explain kind of what our models look like and what the changes are and what the impact for our students are going to be. So within our district, we have, as identified by the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, over half a dozen gifted service models. We have our full-time self-contained, which we house at Hanby Elementary School. We have cluster grouping, which we have at all 15, including Hanby, outside and in addition to our self-contained, at our 15 middles and our 15, oh boy, we don't want 15 middles, at our 15 elementaries and all 5 of our middle schools. A gap that we had in our district service models that we are closing next year is that in grades 9 and 10, we had no gifted service model. Having honors courses count as a gifted service model is something we are permitted to do. And next year, our honors courses in grades 9 and 10 will have gifted trained teachers teaching those courses. And so that will be an additional service model that we have, really expanding the opportunity for hundreds and hundreds of our gifted kids in grades 9 and 10 who were not getting a gifted service beyond middle school. We also have students who take International Baccalaureate courses within their gifted service area. We have students who are taking AP courses within their gifted identified area. We have kids who are taking College Credit Plus courses. And of course, we have some students who are grade accelerated. All of those are gifted service models that we offer in our district as identified by the Ohio Department of Education. We also have at our elementary level and our middle school level what we call gifted facilitators. We had 2 at the middle, we had 4 at the elementary level. And the gifted facilitators provided pull-out enriching services to our gifted students. At the middle school level, they did things like Future City and really cool things like that. At the elementary level, they provided enriching services outside of the gifted service model that they were receiving in their classrooms. And those were very wonderful. I mean, it's kind of like the cherry on top of an already wonderful experience for our gifted kids. But as Mrs. Hamburg said, as we are in the position that we are now, we have to make some difficult choices. And I think I shared this with the board a meeting or two ago, is you always start with what is not required of a student. And you touch that at the very end of what is required and how you reduce that. And so when you look at the facilitators, they provide enriching, wonderful, wonderful experiences, but their services are not our gifted service model and therefore not required. We did not eliminate our facilitators, we reduced. So we went from 2 to 1 at the middle level and we went from 4 to 2 at the elementary level. So some of those pull-out experiences students are still going to have, they're just not going to have them as frequently because the facilitators are spread over more buildings than they were before, but we will still have them. Reducing our facilitators does not change in any way our gifted service models. All of our students are still having their gifted service models in classes in one of those, a variety of service models that I explained to you by gifted trained teachers within our district. So that service is uninterrupted and untouched. Just the extra, the enriching things are going to be reduced to a degree. And another change that is coming effective July as a result of a change in the Ohio Administrative Code, also potentially within our district could expand even more the number of students that we can serve in our gifted program, specifically around our self-contained gifted program. And I'll have Cheryl Relford kind of explain that.
All right. And so I'm just going to expand a little bit. Our gifted self-contained program services students at the elementary level, grades 3, 4, and 5. And with the change in the legislation, it will allow us to not have that 20 student cap that we have per class now. It will allow us to make the cap more equitable to the standard numbers at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We are having conversations around what that increase might look like, but we have to take their superior COG scores into account for inviting students into that self-contained gifted program. So that's going to just take us a little more time to sort through that. Gertie Glass oversees our gifted services team, and they are pulling that data so we can determine who we can invite into the program to fill those extra spaces. Any other questions for us about gifted?
I have a question. Could you maybe expand a little bit more on the communication piece to families, to parents? I understand that there is a difference between the elimination versus reduction, but could you just kind of help those watching know more about the communication about these changes, as we do with all things?
So we are still looking into things, measuring things, and when we are ready for, like when we have the finalized things, we are going to definitely email parents and let them know what it's going to look like, because right now we are just still trying to finalize how things are going to look for next year. Yes, and we just learned of the update as late as last Thursday, so that's when we learned of the update. So we actually did have a meeting at Hanby just to tell the teachers how the law is going to change, but nothing has been sent out to anyone yet. Any other questions?
The law does go into effect July 1st, and so we have a little bit of time to sort through the increase in the class size for gifted self-contained. Again, it was hot off the press last week, but in reference to communicating around gifted facilitator changes, I think we've communicated that out as far as a collective communication, not so much to that targeted group. It does impact all students who have a gifted identification across our elementary and middle school level with the reduction of the gifted facilitator service.
Thank you. A question, if you could help people understand, we're hearing, Hanby classrooms are a bit small, and so I'm assuming you're taking all of this into consideration too. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the good news is our magnet program is also housed at Hanby, and the capacity of those classes right now is 26. And so we would not expect to increase our gifted self-contained beyond that 26, because we know that we are currently able to meet the needs of our students up to that 26 capacity, and it'd be very comfortable. So the gifted self-contained classes sit right across from our magnet classes, and those classes are at 26. I don't envision there being a problem with space because those classroom spaces are pretty much identical.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm wondering if you can, thank you, this is, I think, helpful information and ever-changing, right?
It is.
You touched on it, but I'm just wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about the idea that the pull-out enrichment is not our service model, right?
And I think that's really hard for our families to understand that piece. I was a former principal here in the district and lived through what that looked like. Oftentimes what happens with gifted facilitators, and they've been a gift for us for a long time in our district, but what you'll find is Every classroom teacher who teaches in grades 3, 4, and 5 are required to have a gifted certification hours so they can provide cluster services for all students in our elementary buildings. And so that happens, and we provide PD and support all year long for them to maintain those hours. When it comes to the enrichment activities, they were coming sometimes it was every other week. And so when you look at it from that lens, kids were pulled out for an enrichment activity that was not always based on an academic area. It was based upon higher level thinking skills and strategies, and it did not take the place for direct instruction in the classroom. It really was an extension or on top of some core strategies that we wanted to teach our gifted learners to stretch and challenge them a little bit further. But their core gifted service hours come from that certified classroom teacher who is forward facing with them every day throughout the day, and they should be differentiating in the classroom to meet the full range of needs of all of our kids.
And I'll share this as well, because I listed some of them. It is not for us to create or determine what is the gifted service model. The gifted service model is outlined in very specific, here are gifted service models as recognized by the state of Ohio, and it's in the Ohio Department of Education Workforce, it's in the Ohio Administrative Code. And I think I've alluded to probably in a work session that one of the things that makes this district so very special is we exceed state minimums. We provide amazing experiences for our families, and we have amazing educators that do that. The pullout by the gifted facilitators are one of those, just like our pathways or International Baccalaureate and College Credit Plus, and all the wonderful experiences that make this a special place. And unfortunately, when we have to make reductions, those are the places where you chip away at. And we were fortunate not to have to eliminate it, but we had to chip away at it, which would reduce the number of times that students would be able to interact with them. But that is not one of the identified gifted service models in the administrative code.
Thanks for walking through that again.
Any other questions for them? All right, that is all I have this evening, unless you have any other questions for me.
Could you just talk through a little bit how when we're switching teachers, like what's that process like?
I'm gonna leave that to
We're moving teachers around.
Scott or
What's that
Mark.
process like? Are they just
talking
moved?
process.
Are they allowed to,
Yeah, I mean, there are provisions in a lot of negotiated agreements that allow a superintendent to place for the good of the district teachers around. We have always found that educators are better when they have the opportunity to select something that they may want to do. So if we're able to reduce, if we have to, say, for example, the one that's been in our conscious mostly is Mark Twain in first grade and fourth grade. We could say, we don't need this many sections at Mark Twain. There's nowhere else in the building for you to go. We are reassigning you to this building. However, every WA member, and WESA and all those for that matter, when there is an opening, they have a right to apply to that. And so instead of putting them somewhere and then forcing them to apply, we give teachers the opportunity to take a look at what the openings in our district are, and maybe there's a building, a grade level, or a program that may fit their interest and their expertise, and we give them the ability to do that. But they are doing it among all the WA members who also may, share in that same interest in that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And then when we're looking at, and I know we've talked about this before, but when we're looking at the enrollment numbers, and we're looking at them across the whole district, and we're making changes because of the needs, and some buildings might be going up while enrollment going down in other buildings.
Yeah, and I shared this with parent council as well, and here's probably our most extreme example. And I think Ms. Liban, you might have been in there with me when we had those conversations. Our most extreme example is Westerville Central High School. Right before COVID, going into 18 and 19, Westerville Central was knocking on the door of 1,900 students. And we were continually adding staff there to accommodate their need. Some of the staff came from Westerville North, in Westerville South, Westerville North specifically, who was shrinking in staff. They were down into the high 1,300s of students. Well, that trend has kind of reversed, and now Westerville Central is not even our largest building anymore. Westerville North is. And so over the last several years, staff have been reassigned from Central as they have lost enrollment to Westerville North or Westerville South, or some kind of split between all of them, to accommodate for the growth in one place and the loss of enrollment at another, so that when you look at the ratio of students to kids, math teachers to kids, English teachers to kids, we have a comparable resources across our district. That happens with elementary too. Elementary is not as segmented as high school with all the courses and grades and all of that. You may have 75 second graders. Well, that's a really neat number. That's 3 teachers for 25 kids per class. Well, then you have those numbers that are tricky. And do you have really, really high class sizes within our bounds? Or do you have really, really low class sizes that perhaps are significantly lower across the district, as you said, comparatively? So you take, for example, Mark Twain. Mark Twain this year has 75 first graders. That's very easy. They have 3 classes of 25. Well, next year they'll have 56. And so you're like, okay, wow, that's 26, 27 a class. We have just adjusted numbers, and I don't know the updated numbers because we've had now open enrollment and we had our magnet lottery earlier. So there's some kids being extracted from that. Well, you could have 3, if you maintain 3 sections, you'd have 16, 17 kids per class, which is wonderful. But when you look equitably across our district in 1st grade or 4th grade, that's not equitable at all from the experiences of our other students. And that bubble will move through. And so next year, 2nd grade will need 3 for these 75 first graders. But 2 years after that, they'll only have 50 or so 2nd graders. And so you'll have to make adjustments. The biggest, I wouldn't say issue, but the circumstance of Mark Twain is typically when that happens, there's another grade for that teacher to move to within the same building. And either they're through lack of retirement, through lack of resignations in that particular building, there was not anywhere. And so the 2 teachers impacted had to select something else in the district for them. I mean, they did not lose their contract. They just weren't able to teach in that building at that grade. So that's pretty much the process for elementary, but there's movement of teachers every single year.
I think Ms. Relford has something to add too.
And I also just want to add this other piece. I know we're talking about Mark Twain at this time, but we have 2 other elementary buildings who are being impacted the same way. And we don't make this decision lightly, but we do have to take into account those numbers at every grade level so that it's equitable across the entire district. And I'm just going to speak personally as the person who's responsible for leading us through this process. We had a situation this year where we had to make a change in classes mid-year. We want to be proactive versus reactive because in the middle of the year, that is not the time to reassign babies. We need for them to know where they're starting at the beginning of the year and stay with that teacher for the duration of the year. But this was the first time in my career as an educator where I had to make a decision to move from 3 sections at one of our elementaries down to 2 because they were sitting at 17 and 18 students in those 3 classes, and one of the teachers went on leave and we couldn't fill the position. So we don't ever want to be in that situation again. Elementary is developmentally, it's very difficult for kids to adjust mid-year, so we are trying to be as proactive as we possibly can. And again, that was one of the hardest decisions that I had to make, but it was a necessary decision because we would much rather have kids with a certified teacher, highly qualified teacher versus a non-certified teacher. And by making the decisions now for those 3 elementary buildings based upon their current enrollment, we are ensuring that they start the school year with a certified teacher, but we will make sure to monitor those numbers all summer long. And if there's a need to add back, we will. But right now, the numbers don't justify that at this time.
Thank you.
Go ahead if you have more on that.
I just wanted to ask, thank you, a follow-up. When do we actually make that final decision so parents know kind of what to expect?
So unfortunately, we do have families apply for enrollment late into the summer. We would hope that we would be able to do it by June, July. But sometimes it's later, contingent upon how many students enroll. We do have pockets within our district where they're later to enroll. And so I wish I could say it would be done way like now, but it could change even over the summer. Mark Twain is a building where they have a pocket where some of the families enroll quite late into the summer. So it could still, we don't want to just have to overflow a lot of students. So again, we'll continue to monitor it. I wish I could say that we would have it done by mid-June, but it might be closer to July before we can finalize it.
And first grade's always tricky because with not having all-day kindergarten, sometimes we get kids coming in who attended kindergarten elsewhere. So that's one that we definitely want to hold out and see where we are to make sure we don't get some late enrollments.
And I'd say for high school, because there are so many moving parts and so many content areas, we know by now, surely what our staff movement is going to be. Because even if there's an influx of 30 kids to a high school, it's over 4 grades. It's some in English, some in geometry, some in, you're really talking about 1, maybe 2 kids in a classroom. So we can lock in high school almost by the start of May so they can build their master schedules.
Thank you.
And also I can speak for the EL department and also for special ed. That's something that we do all the time because we cannot have a classroom of teachers sitting with like 6 kids. And if we have like another building sitting at 12. So we are always monitoring like throughout the year, monitoring the numbers. And around this time of the year, that's when we sit down together with the department heads and also with HR just to say, okay, based on this number, this is where this teacher needs to go. So this is something that we monitor literally every day to ensure that, teachers and students are proportionally, we have the ratio going the right way for all of our students. So we'll continue to work on that.
I just wanted to, Mr. Reeves, since you mentioned high school, I just wanted to briefly talk about the difference, which you touched on there. So there's a difference in terms of the way teachers are licensed, right? And of course, they're teaching periods. So, there might be a teacher who, because we offer a specialized program, is teaching a very small class 1 period, but they could have a very large class, for 2/3 of the rest of the day, and they're licensed in that specific content area. So just the way that we can move teachers at high school is very different.
Yes.
And the way that, to look at, we try not to have extremely small high school classes, but sometimes that happens.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean they're sitting with that many kids all day long.
And it really happens within those specialized niches, like some of our AP classes or a College Credit Plus class or an International Baccalaureate class where the breadth of choices are so great, kids are very segmented, as opposed to Algebra 1, every kid has to take that. And so you have full classes across the board, but by the time you get to the junior, senior year, there are literally dozens and dozens of courses students can take, and sometimes you'll have sections that you have the resource for that is smaller than others. But for a teacher at the secondary level, we try to keep them at around 125 a day. That's 25 for 5 classes, which is a full time. And there are some that are right at that. There are some that are a little less than that. There's some might be just under 100. And it really depends on what they're teaching and what their schedule looks like. So you're absolutely right with that.
Thank you. It's just a totally different. Totally different.
And typically, to his point, our underclass courses are much higher enrollment. So a teacher might have freshmen and then AP something. So they've got a ton of kids, not a ton, but a lot more kids in their freshman class than they would AP.
Only other thing I just want to say out loud is that any teacher that has been displaced, we are prioritizing getting them placed. We are only accepting applications from internal candidates at this time for the vacancies at elementary. And we are working feverishly to get everyone in a position of their choice, because this is that time of choice. And in the event that they don't make that choice, then we will work with HR to make sure that we get them placed. And so it's been a huge undertaking. I'm happy to say that we're dwindling down those numbers, but we just want to make sure everybody's in a position. No one is being terminated with these change in FTE.
And just to connect those dots, again, it's easier to just place people, but we're trying to start with choice. We may have to place some people. Any other questions? All right, thank you.